All right, we are going to skip section 1.8 and go to 1.9, partly because Monday and Tuesday there's no school. I want to finish our chapter today, tomorrow review, and then you'll have your test. You'll do your test on Friday. Okay, that way it's done. You have the weekend to not much of anything. So we're going to section 1.9. It's called opposites and absolute values. Opposites, basically, if you have a positive number, the opposite negative number. If you have a negative number, the opposite is positive. Okay, so nothing out of the ordinary there. So we're dealing with problems like this where we have a negative outside of parentheses or so, which negative is just another word for opposite. We do the opposite here. We do what's inside. 7 plus 9 is 16. We have the opposite of 16 is negative 16. It's super difficult. If you have a negative of a negative, what's that equal? Positive. One thing, I mean, just think about multiplying, so it would be positive 2. One way we can think about that, if you have negative of a negative of a negative, so we can make these brackets, make it a little bit easier. But however many you have, if this number, we have an even number, even turns out to be positive. Here we have odd, so let's think about this. Negative of a negative would be positive 1. We have a negative of that, so it's negative 1. So we had an odd number of signs. Our answer was negative. So if you have an even number of negatives, it's positive. If you have an odd number of negatives, it's negative. Okay, so let's do some of these substitution. I'm going to tell you that n equals negative 8. So in place of n, we have negative n is negative 8 plus 14. Make sure you include this negative and that negative. So what's the opposite or a negative of negative 8? Positive 8. 8 plus 14 is 22. So this negative is right here. This negative is the one right here. That's why we have 2 negatives. All right. Absolute value. Let's talk about that. Absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. So how far from 0? Let's start with 8. How far from 0 is 8? 8. How far from 0 is negative 8? 8. So our answer, if there's nothing on the outside, is always going to be a positive number. It can be a negative if we have something like this. So we first start with the absolute value of 8 is 8, and then we bring down this negative. So now let's say we have a negative absolute value of negative 8. We always start inside. What's the absolute value of negative 8? 8. And then we have a negative of that, or the opposite is negative 8. That's the only time you'll get a negative for your answer, is if the negative is outside. We can have problems where you work it inside. So we start inside and work the problem. What is 4 minus 6? Negative 2. Now we have the absolute value of negative 2. 2. That could change the problem if we split it up. Now we can work it, but we need to do a different order. So we do the absolute value of each, 4 and 6, but now we need 4 minus 6, which will be negative 2. We did a different order because they were grouped differently. So again, we got a negative on that one, but not from the absolute value. We got the negative from our subtraction. All right. Last type you will see, they're going to ask you for the absolute value of a variable. Let's say absolute value of x, in this case, equals 3. What number is, think of it this way, what number is 3 units away from 0? 3. Then I'm going to write this word. 4. Negative 3 is also 3 units away. Well, let's go back and check that. What is this equal? 3. So if you have any positive number there, you should get 2 answers. Positive 2 answers. Let's say it's this. How many numbers are 0 units? What number is 0 units away from 0? 0. So it's x equals 0. So if it's 0, 1 answer. Now, let's look at one last example. Can we ever get an absolute value that's negative? What number is negative 4 from 0? Well, how many units is 4 away? 4. You always measure distance in a positive, so no matter which way you walk, you've still gone 4 units. So in this case, our answer is no solution. It's not possible to go negative. I think about it, to your house is at negative 4 miles, even though you might have gone the opposite way. Okay, so if there's a negative answer, or negative, there's 0 answers. Okay. So when it's positive, we're going to get 2 answers, 0, you get 1, which is 0. If it's negative, the answer is no solution. Okay. So over today on page 38. And 39. So 13 to 43 odd. 13 to 43 odd on page 38 and 39.